Welcome everyone to session 3E, Primary Resources, Technology and Governance Development Aspects. My name is Michael Tost from Universidad in Austria, and together with Sonia, Valdivia from the World Resources Forum in Switzerland, the two of us will be the chairs of this session now. Sandra Carrillo Hoyos, a general manager of Pacific Corporate Sustainability, a consultancy firm with international coverage, whose pioneer debt assurances in Latin America and the Caribbean. They included actually the first sustainability bond based on the Sustainable Development Goals standards for bonds and the verification of green and sustainability bonds certified by Climate Bonds Initiative, CBI. And Sandra is going to talk about post-COVID local development agenda in mining communities. So please, Sandra.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. My research in this time is about, as you mentioned, how can we combine the sustainable development with so many challenges derived from mining industry. This research is like the second part of a previous study that I made about the subnational resource course, about how the local incomes and revenues could derive in better sustainable development opportunities. And what I have done and what is this objective of this research is to contribute with literature by analyzing what is the impact of COVID-19 on local mining communities, selecting a specific case study. This is a district of Guayay in the central highlands of Peru, but this district could be a really simple example of what is happening in many other cities of Peru. And obviously, this situation is very similar to what is happening also in African and other global South countries where resources are rich, right? So the research questions in this case are in which extent the COVID-19 has created effects in local development indicators in mining industry dependent subnational areas. What actions were taken by public institutions and mining companies by corporate sustainability strategies to address COVID-19, and which are the gaps between the investment made from both the public and private sector and the main environmental and social issues and challenges faced by the mining industry. And just to put you all in the context, where is located Guayay and where we are. Well, this district is in the center of Peru in Pasco region, which is in the central highlands of Peru. The population of Guayay is around 11,500 people, approximately from the last census. They have 100 years of mining history, 2 silver mining operations, Pan American Silver, which is a very common and familiar and well reputed company, and also Volcan Mining Company, which is a local company. And because of the mining history of this city that I could share more time than 10 minutes, however, the important thing here is that this city is a cosmopolitan area because of the migration of many people who go to work on the minings, and in this way, this district has been growing up. This has created, as you can see in the first picture, has been a disorderly growth, no, because of the context of the mining opportunities. However, although they have grown in population, in income, this is not necessarily translated in all development indicators. So that's why I they found very interesting to analyze a couple of figures to share with you. In the first figure of the left, you can see the evolution of the per capita income of Guayay. This district is not one of the main, as you can see, one of the main poor local communities of Peru. On the opposite, they have a very good average of per capita income demonstrated around the 7 last years approximately. However, we can see the opposite figure when we analyze the life expectancy after. This creates some interesting analyzing arguments about how they are investing in health, in sanitation, because these two areas are key challenges for the human development of the population, and also constraints many opportunities for development. So as you can see, they are inclusive above the average of the per capita income of the region, and also sometimes above the national income per capita of Peru. However, in the life expectancy after, the results are the opposite. So this is really interesting to analyze what happened after the pandemic. After the pandemic, what we found was that in first instance, that as you can see, as you can notice with this very brief resume, they have a really strong mining dependency. So when the pandemic arrived, the economic was paralyzed, no? As most of the mining operation stopped, also the economic incomes of the city. So this mining dependency creates many challenges and many issues for the population. And if it's true that mining and the natural resources are really important for the city, but they have other two big and incredible potentials that are livestock and tourism, which are really interesting because I will share some pictures about the potential of tourism, but has been like postponed agendas for development. So this is one first interesting argument, and also result of this study, that create a better approach to diversification of the economy. And in the second point, the postponed health and sanitation agenda. Although they have 100 years of mining incomes, they don't have an equal access to safe drinking water. 1 minute. And also they have a limited attention for medical care center. And in the third place, they have a very limited internet access, and this has created many limitations for the virtual education in the context of the pandemic. So just to put some challenges and opportunities to close my participation, this is a clear case for economic and diversification, and also the potential for tourism boost and livestock value chain, where the technology that will be addressed by other presentations will be really interesting to incorporate, and the possibilities to comply and invest in this kind of agendas are corporate sustainability strategies, public-private initiatives, and civil society participation. So in this way, we can promote the development investment in core topics, as I mentioned, to boost the sustainable development agenda and understand better which are the challenges of this specific city, but as I mentioned, could be translated to any place of resources mining rich cities or districts in the global south. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I want to introduce Farnaz Eslamishoar from the World Resources Forum to present about innovative technologies in the mining sector, attaining sustainable development. Farnaz is with World Resources Forum, but she's also an affiliated scientist at the chair of bioenergy and energy planning research at the research group at EPFL. So Farnaz, the floor is yours.
So welcome everyone and good day to everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session where I would talk about the innovative technologies in the mining sector for attaining a sustainable development. And I would present this work on behalf of the co-authors highlighted below. So as an introduction, we all know and aware and we agree that mining introduces both synergies and trade-offs to the sustainable development, which is important and has important implications for the sustainable development goals. The thing that is important and is highlighted in this work, which is often rather neglected or at least not that much looked upon, is actually that technologies brings efficiency. And nevertheless, mining is normally lagging behind in technological adoption due to technical and financial reasons in the mining companies. In other words, when they want to introduce new technologies, such as, for example, drones, such as AI, and so on and so forth to their process, there are limitations that hinders the mining companies to introduce these technologies. In other words, making their process whatever that is more efficient. What in this 5 minutes, what I would like to quickly highlight about the achievement of this paper is that this paper would introduce some tools for making this decision of choosing between the technologies for the mining companies more easily. And later on, it will follow about introducing some methodologies for a multivariate analysis and choosing the best between the technology options available. The main findings are first through some structured interviews, identifying and introducing what technologies are other in the first place and the sustainability criteria of mining, which were important to the mining firms. On the right side, you see a transience map. This map is actually derived from a body of literature on the process innovation. You see that how each of the technologies of the new innovations introduced to the business is ranked and categorized upon the market customer linkage and technology to the technology / production. And there's a whole body of literature on how each of these categories would interfere in the business as usual. Also, on the left side, you see that we try to also to distinguish and detect a creative destroyer. As a very good example that we found in this paper is that the lab-based mineral, for example, the synthetic diamonds, would act as a creative destruction, as Schumpeter puts in the literature, for better or for worse, for the process of mining that is going on. Also, in a two-dimensional more of area of our work, we try to look at how, based on our structure interviews, how each of these identified technologies would act upon each of these sustainability criteria. So on the left side, you see a principal component analysis, meaning that each of these groups of the technologies, so each of the names that you see are an abbreviation of the technologies identified in each of the 5 sectors of mining, how they act upon and how they act similar to each other based on their performance through each of the mining sustainability criteria. And on the right side, you see what is called analytical hierarchical process, or in short, AHP, which is a multivariate pairwise ranking matrix for innovative technologies. So for instance, you see that as an instance, CO2 sequestration would act as a high impact on the as on the AHP results, and so on and so forth. So that was a very quick go through how some has ideas of having some tools in hand to choose between each of the technologies for having an innovation in the process of how actually we are doing things would look on. but maybe as an implication of what I introduced you right now, we would conclude that providing a set of tools is important to bear in mind that the need is to have a holistic view to technological suggestion, meaning that the implications of these technology introduction for the government's technology investment or the mining company technology investment is important to bear in mind what we actually need in that specific mining site. For instance, one of the technologies that we detect is phytoremediation, which probably is not that much rank innovative, but at the same time, in a specific mining site, it can actually have a great impact on the environment. So this holistic view and looking at all these variations in mind when choosing the technology is very important. With that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to our discussion and debate afterwards.
Thank you very much, Farnaz. Next up is Stefan Dirlich, talking about the remining approach. Stefan is an environmental engineer from Freiberg University in Germany, where he was responsible for an MBA program dedicated to environmental and resource management. With students coming from all over the world, a lot of them, given the African partner in Ghana, a lot of them also coming from Ghana. So Stefan, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's an honor for me to have a talk at the World Resources Forum this year, unless it's a bit a pity that I cannot be there physically, because I would have liked to be in Ghana once again after a while. So far, you cannot see my presentation in full, but now you can. So I will give a short introduction to the remining approach, which we see at the Helmholtz Institute Freiberg for Resource Technology in Germany. And first of all, I will give a short introduction to the topic and explain a bit the conventional rehabilitation of tailings, followed by a brief introduction as well into the remining approach as we see it, and then give some glimpse on the next level opportunities we see before it's followed by a summary and an outlook. So for us, the remining involves all processes and efforts relating to the utilization of material from mining activities that may be from the past or from current activities, also from metallurgical activities. Tailing material is of quite diverse composition. It involves a lot of complex minerals, so it's very hard to process actually. But if you do so, you can gain a lot of ecological benefits as well. But of course, you have to check the technical potential versus the economic potential, which might be a difficult thing to do. And we try to do this in a holistic way, as you see from this so-called sustainability assessment with the economic, ecological, and social dimension, which we try to refer to. Having a look at the conventional rehabilitation, the main goal is to minimize the environmental impact from tailings. And in Saxony, we have a lot of tailings and other dumps from mining activities from the past, with a lot of hazard substances in it, and usually they don't have an adequate sealing. So the Saxonian government developed a so-called level concept of rehabilitation with a lot of different phases, and I will just concentrate, due to the time constraints, just on the remediation. So here we see that it tries to do the remediation in a way to prevent the environmental risks through the different paths, from soil to human, soil, plant, human, also from soil to water and groundwater, and so on and so forth, in order to minimize these risks and have a better environmental condition in the area. So the remining approach is a bit different. So first of all, we have a look at the valuable materials in such tailings. This is a 3D modeling of the tailing body in Davidstadt, which is in Freiberg, so where the institute is situated. And through some drillings, I think it was 20 or so, we try to have this modeling and trying to depict the potential. So where are the valuable materials concentrated? And you see this in this picture through the yellowish parts. We had a project also called Remining, and that was dedicated to the upscaling of the bioleaching lab scale plant. We did so until the beginning of this year, and together with our partner GEOS in Freiberg as well, we had this container pilot plant, which included this all the apparatus for the bioleaching, and we combined it together with a already existing pilot plant for metal extraction and electrolysis. Also, the idea is to test material from all over the world in this pilot plant, and to tell the owners, the miners, whether this material is has the potential to be recovered. Business plan was also a part of that project, and here just some photos of these containers, so including the bioleaching part on the top, and the electrolysis and metal extraction in the lower part. From that, we furthered our research and developed an innovative technology platform in which environment and resource technology is combined as well, and also fused with the concept of Industry 4.0, so more digital approach to that. They want to develop the region in the long term and have a flexible strategy for that because of structured change as well. And the idea is also to go for international markets after having these projects in the region, and then trying to enhance to international. Another project that is going on is that we try to recover more finer particles through flotation innovations, and it's a Horizon 2020 project called Fine Future, and the results will be available end of next year most probably. And so finally, to summarize, we see remining as an important pillar of research at our institute, which can contribute to an efficient and sustainable resource utilization. Sometimes tailings are very difficult because of their various composition and the complex structure, and that means that it requires adapted processing technology. Often the separation of the valuables is technically feasible, but the processes are mostly extensive. So in most cases, remining is not viable economically on its own, but if you combine it with ecological rehabilitation, it often makes sense. And we are always developing together with our partners further ideas and projects to disseminate the findings, and we try to enhance our competencies and knowledge in that area. And together with GEOS, especially the partner I mentioned already, we have the vision to establish an innovative joint startup to offer services and engineering for remining. With that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and a lot of thanks to my colleagues who contributed to this research as well. And yeah, I'm happy to be part of the discussion later.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Our next speaker is Aaron Chukasinge, who's going to talk about stakeholder engagement and information technology as enablers for successful implementation of local contents requirements in African countries. So Aaron, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak here. It's my first time to speaking here at the World Resource Forum. And I will be talking on about the stakeholder engagement and information technology as enabler to successful local content implementation in African countries. So for my presentation will focus more on the key issues that affect local content implementation in Africa and the stakeholders engagement. For the sake of the time, I go straight forward to the content of the presentation, talking first of the African Natural Resource Center, which I represent here. We are the arm of the African Development Bank responsible of supporting African countries in maximizing the outcome of the exploitation of the natural resources. And this study falls in that line because it's actually under a flagship study, which is geared at the local content and value addition. And the aim of the study itself is to provide evidence-based policy advice and advocacy for African countries in order to improve the formulation and implementation of local content requirements. Why do we do this work? We do this work principally because after years of studies and working with most African countries on local content of petroleum and mining industry particularly, we notice that sometimes we have local content, we have local front instead of local content. And the local front comes from the divergence of objectives, of view on objectives, scope, and even on the need of local content from each of the stakeholders, mainly the government, the investors in the private sector, and the local communities. Do we need local content? Sometimes the companies will tell you, no, we don't need local content. But the government will tell you, yes, we need local content, and local communities will view local content in a different way. So how to align the view, objectives, and the expectation of all these stakeholders in order for them to, instead of building a local front, they are building real local content and contribute all to the outcome of local content with the same objective. So the aim of the study, which is based on primary data in interviews and surveys, then secondary data from literature, case studies principally highlighted that these issues can be tackled and effectively addressed even in environment with poor legal and regulatory framework and low government capacity. Good stakeholders engagement can permit to have good local content outcome. So let's go there. This is a framework that the study is proposing for local content engagement. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we were all aware of the advance that was hidden, the hidden advance of the information technology and the advantage that we can take from the information technology to spur most of our activities, enhance our communication and our collaboration. Today we collaborate thanks to the COVID and the digital technology in some areas more than before and better than before. Therefore, we, after analyzing the case studies, we propose a framework where the government, private sector, the local community, educational institution, financial institution can collaborate with specified goals, with performance indicators, and in a framework where everybody can have a role to steer local content policies, not just think of the government, which actually is the main driver, but others have to play a role, because with this, even from the formulation, we can avoid wrong formulation or formulation with high expectation than the local economy can provide, because it is often to see in local content policies in some countries that okay, in 10 years time we are going to have 100% employment of local at this level, but is the country ready? Have they made a base assessment? Do we have the framework, the capacity to implement this policy? But with the stakeholders on the table, all these issues can be looked upon, and addressed. So,
Aaron, sorry
yes,
to interrupt, but you need to come to an end, please.
exactly. I am at the end actually. So for this, we have a case studies. We undertook case studies in Angola, Chad, and Nigeria. So the case studies revealed that improved alignment of the expectation and of the stakeholders and good results can be obtained from local content from the engagement of the stakeholders with information technology tools, even where you have suboptimal policies and low government capacity. Therefore, this recommendation that we cannot overstress upon, the government should take advantage of information technology and digital platform to unlock the local content potential in the countries. And for that, you need policies to encourage companies and other stakeholders to play their role and see local content as local content and not local front. Thank you. Here ends my presentation. I'd be happy to receive questions.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Last speaker in our session is Hervé Carfotio, who's going to talk about oil dependency, political institutions, and urban-rural disparities in access to electricity in Africa. So Hervé, the floor is yours, please.
Thanks, Michael, for this opportunity to present our paper entitled Oil Dependency, Political Institution, and Urban-Rural Disparities in Access.
Yeah, it seems that we've lost Hervé. Well, let's see if he comes back. Otherwise, I mean, we're already running late on time anyways. So I guess, Sonia, unless he comes back, I'll hand over to you now for the discussion, and we'll start with questions and with the discussion.
Thank you very much. I think we can do that. I have seen the chat, and there are not. I have a couple of questions, but I don't see yet. Please, while you write your questions, also speakers are welcome to please raise your points and ask the other panelists. So I have a question to Stefan. You mentioned, Stefan, in your conclusions that it's expensive, the separation of valuable minerals. I mean, when you talk about remining, the processes are expensive. Which is the most critical variable to make it so expensive? What could be done to make it cheaper? Maybe there are scenarios under which they can be not so expensive.
So what we see is maybe that it's not so expensive. It costs a lot of efforts to separate the material and the valuables from the other material because of their low grade and the complexity of the minerals. But we should turn it back maybe because the price for other resources, for primary resources, are too low actually, because it doesn't internalize other environmental impacts or so. So maybe that's the better way to express it.
Okay, so there might be scenarios under which you can consider the reminder.
Sure. So of course, yeah, and we had a lot of projects in that area, and always the problem turned out that it was involved with so much effort, so a lot of process steps as well, of course, and that we see that compared to the sheer disposal of the material, it's too costly. But if we can include as well the environmental benefit, and if the environmental costs that are there, of course, but they are not internalized, then the situation is much different, of course.
Okay, that becomes clear. Maybe I can raise another question, and then I hand over to you, Michael, if you have, or other panelists, of course, and participants. I have a question for Sandra. It was interesting, the post-COVID analysis and assessment you try to do in the mining sector. I'm wondering if you also looked at the gender aspects, if you have something to say about the gender aspects in this regard.
Yes. Well, in general, the pandemic has highlighted the violence to women across the world, and mining communities are not the exception. In the case of Guayay, I found many also gaps, including the attention of these kind of cases of violence, sexual violence, to denounce and also to make the information available. So it's very challenging because it's not sufficiently public, the information about the cases. However, on the qualitative analysis of interviews, I raised it as a main issue also of a post-COVID sustainable development agenda for this kind of communities.
Thanks. There is a follow-up question in the chat for Stefan. Given the huge sizes of tailing, do you think modular or container size approach would be suitable? And what was your rationale to go for it?
Yes, I've seen that question as well already. So the idea is not to process all the material with that pilot plant containers, but it's only to make the feasibility study. And then based on that results, it's time for upscaling and then to have other larger facilities to do the job actually. But as they're in containers, the idea was at least to have that as a mobile or at least semi-mobile solution to ship them to tailings worldwide and do the, I would call it feasibility studies actually, and not the real processing of the total material, of course.
Thanks. Sandra, maybe you already read the question in the chat about the other economic sectors that exist in Guayay and how to reduce the dependence on mining. Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, they have two other key economic activities. Well, the first one is the livestock, and the other one, the tourism. They have like a stone forest that I shared in the pictures, which is one of the recognized as one of the Peruvian wonders. So they have these two big potentials. However, they are like postponed in the agenda, and I think that that's the main possibility of diversification to obviously not to avoid the mining activities is important for the income, but use that incomes, that revenues also to create long-term economic strategies, because if other pandemic comes, they will be stopped completely economically and also social, and deriving many other problems and issues for not only for this, as I said, this is just a sample of one city or one district, but this situation is the same in many other cities in Peru, and I am very worried about that. This is the same in many cities of the global south. So that's, I think, maybe a common issue also in Ghana, but I have read many researchers researching about this subnational resource course.
Okay, is there any other question from the speakers to other speakers?
If I may come in.
Yes.
I got a question for Farnaz. Farnaz, can you maybe explain a little bit more about sort of which technologies you looked at? I know that you mentioned a couple of examples, but I'd be curious which, particularly for the exploitation part, which technologies did you look at there, and particularly automatization, autonomous equipment, etc., whether or not that was part of your research as well?
Yes, thank you very much, Michael, for your question. As I tried to briefly mention, we looked at the technologies in each of the 5 sectors of mining, and for the exploitation specifically, the automated transportation and the automated extraction machines, which actually use with the optimized transportation time and techniques, so reduce the people actually on the site when and whenever possible, would have a great impact on the efficiency, which is the core concept and the philosophy kind of behind. Also, the monitoring parts, that was also an important technology that came up during the structure interviews, which will comprise out of the academy of mining to start with, the mining companies, to the different, all of the stakeholders. And what we concluded at the end was that if there are lots of potentials in other parts and in other sectors of engineering, and what specifically interests me a lot was that if we have this link to introduce what is new and what can be done also to the mining technologies, it would have indeed a great impact to introduce new ways of what we are doing already. So there I see that based on the whole ideas that we discussed throughout this conference, for example, there are 2 ways to taking a look at the responsible mining, how to do this more responsibly, which has its own strategies and guidelines and steps to follow, but at the same time, how the process, the engineering process that we are doing, how to make this more efficient. So introducing new ways, not only in the social side, but also in more of a technical side, in another word, having this link, which it actually happens, as you would agree, in all parts of science. We do our own things and we do it maybe very well, but sometimes this link, because we are not that much having, as I said in my presentation, a holistic view, then sometimes a very precious moments and very precious ways of doing things much more efficiently and much more sustainably, sometimes we just lag behind.
Mm-hmm. I guess with that, you kind of answered also the question that just came up for you in the chat. What do these technologies adaptations actually mean for the companies? So it's mainly about efficiency and improved environmental impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the companies, as I also tried to briefly mention in my presentation, what struck me in the primary phases of interviews, the companies are not all of them are unaware of what is it out there that they can actually adopt, what is out there as more of a high-tech machineries, high-tech way as monitoring, high-tech way of excavation, and automated way of things and so on, but actually what they are looking at is how to also optimize the work that they are doing. So these tools that I just pinpointed, and this is the result of our paper, is just a beginning, just to help them having a more holistic and holistic pairwise altogether view of, based on different factors like financial factor, technological factor, human factor, and all of that, how they can choose between the best option possible that actually results into the way of their work, their specific work based on the land, based on the methods of mining, how they can also benefit from choosing and going for one specific option of technological adoption.
Thanks. Can I just ask maybe Mr. Fotio to provide one last statement on his presentation, and perhaps if Mr. Aaron can talk the same, because he will not present but 1 minute statement on his message. We are not hearing you, Mr. Cafo.
Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. We have serious worries with internet connection here. So the paper that I was supposed to present was co-writing with Dr. Tutum, and it's entitled Oil Dependency, Political Institution, and Urban-Rural Disparities in Access to Electricity in Africa. The main idea behind the paper is that existing study have shown, how will I say it? I'm a little bit confused because it is not exactly what I intended to do or to present here. Mm-hmm. But let us say that a growing number of studies have investigated the link between natural resource and economic growth. And most of this study find that resource-rich countries tend to have low economic growth than resource-poor countries. And this relationship has been extended to other aspects of human development, including education, health, and living standard. However, in the literature, the authors reveals that good institutions act or can offset the adverse effect of natural resource exploitation on human development. But what is lacking in the existing literature is that these studies does not tell to what extent the resource curves can vary from one region to another or within the same country. That is the main argument of our study, and that we have investigated the effect of natural resource, especially oil rent, on disparities in access to electricity in Africa. Also, we have investigated the role of political institutions in challenging the resource curves. So we have collected data on a sample of African countries, 36 African countries, and we estimate a dynamic equation model. The main result is that we find that there exists, the oil curves hypothesis is valid for urban-rural disparities in access to electricity in Africa. Okay. Or basically, we find that an increase in the oil rent tend to increase the gap between urban and rural people with access to electricity. This result can be explained by the fact that previous study shows that oil rent tend to increase urban concentration, and that we hypothesize that the resource-led urbanization imply that government should relocate important part of natural resource on public infrastructure towards urban areas, and then include urban and rural areas. In addition, we have investigated the role of institution, and we find that.
Could we summarize, please, because we really need to close?
Yeah, this is the last result. This is the last one. So we find that an increase in political institutions tend to offset the adverse effect of oil on the disparities. So we propose to government to invest share of oil rent in the supply of basic infrastructure in rural areas, including electricity. Okay. Okay, so I will summarize. I will stop.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. I think maybe to say hello, and maybe the title of your presentation, because really we need to close now, Mr. Aaron.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak again. Unfortunately, I couldn't put my camera in the first talk. Yes, I will say that I agree first with Hervé about the oil rent, the oil use and the social development in the country, but I will propose that we talk more of governance curse than talking of resource curse. No resource is a curse. It's the way the resource is used that makes it a curse. That's why a better expression for that is governance curse for those countries. To come back to my presentation, it is related to resource curse. If we talk of local content, it is because we want to enhance the inclusion and the benefit that these countries can derive from the oil and gas or the minerals exploitation. So in a nutshell, my presentation was to ask this question: Do we go for a local font or we go for local content? When stakeholders are not aligned, we are developing a local font. But when they are aligned, we develop a local content and actually get the best from the local content policies. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, I guess, Sonia, there's nothing else for us to do other than thank the speakers for their presentations, thank the participants for their participation and the questions in the chat as well. Thanks for joining us in this session and enjoy the last couple of hours of 2021 World Resources Forum as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.